Christmas season, and I thought it'd be really nice before autumn disappears completely into the distance that we would return to the horse chestnut and add the leaf. Now this is a huge leaf to do because it's basically seven leaves all in one go. So I've already done half of it, and I thought I'll do these lovely three here for you because one's very simple, the stalk's very simple, and these two leaves have similarities and to the original leaves that I've painted. I think that makes sense. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just paint those three. I've got a photograph to work from here. The actual leaf has curled and died and left me, so I'm going to work from the photograph. I've printed it off actual size, I've drawn it actual size. It's not the biggest of the leaves, it was towards the end of the branch. And it's one of the first trees to go over, so sadly, you know, it's the first to look like autumn, isn't it, the horse chestnut? But it's got some beautiful things going on, some lovely patches of colour and a very subtle light. So I took it in the evening with lovely cool light across it. So anyway, let's get to mixing up the colours and then talk about the techniques in just a mo. I'm going to use my little pot of green. I'm using a little dish here that I found, and I've mixed up a green, and this green is basically, if I mix it up again for you on the palette, I've mixed up a lot of French ultramarine and all you do is squeeze it into the pot. And I've got a little demo, as you know, if you've been with me for a while, mixing a cup of green. And it's a really useful thing to do, to have a big reservoir, especially when you're painting a lot of greens. And I mix what I call my woodland green, which is a green that is very versatile. It's a sort of mid-green, and you can adapt it on the palette. And to the French ultramarine, you add Sennelier Yellow Deep, and then you can add a little touch of phthalocyanine to keep the heat. And then if you want to brighten it, add a little bit of lemon. So it's those four colours. And if you feel like it's too vivid or anything like that, you can add a tiny little bit of Sennelier Red if you want to make more of a deeper, darker, dirtier green. So if you want to heat it up again, just keep adding small amounts of the phthalocyanine, and that will give you your mid-green. And so we have a pot of it here as a reservoir to use when we want to just very quickly mix up a lot of green. So that's my green that I'm going to use as my base green, and then I'm going to make it slightly bluer for this deeper side. So I'm going to add some more French ultramarine. Just a little bit more, so that we've got a slightly more navy green. I'm going to call it navy green, I don't know why. That just suddenly came into my head. Add a little bit more water. And then we'll take a bit from our reservoir over here, and we will make it more lighter rather. We'll make it lighter with some more lemon. So we end up with a fresher green. And then we'll go even fresher. We'll take what's on our brush and add even more lemon. So we have a nice range of different greens. We also need some colours for the patches of discoloration. So we need to clean our brush. In fact, rather than do that, I'm going to just use a clean mixing brush. And I'm going to mix up some lemon and just add a tiny little bit of Sennelier Red to that, just to make a sort of warmish pale yellow. And then the browns will do later, so I just want to have that colour to mix with my lighter green. So I'm going to use a bigger brush because it's a big leaf. The first one we're going to do is going to be the larger leaf. Let's get that started. I've got a slight cockle on my paper. I'm hoping it's not going to annoy you too much. But anyway, I'm working on the Fabriano, the new Fabriano, which has a slightly stronger texture than we're used to in the past, but the behaviour of the paper is really nice. So we'll see how we get on as well with the big sleeves. It seems to be a theme with me at the moment of having bigger and bigger sleeves. I'll catch on to any little fashion that's going on a little bit later, and that's I've obviously stuck, you know, come to the big sleeve, and I think it's already done already, but anyway, here it is in the wardrobe and we're wearing it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to water over the whole of this half of the leaf up to where the pattern becomes, or the discoloration becomes really pronounced. And I drew this freehand, so I'm hoping that it will relate really well to the photograph. I like to keep my drawing skills in every now and then, so I draw freehand, because I often think that that's the way one maintains good drawing skills, observation skills. I'm going to go over that one, but I'm going to go around that little mark there. And I've indicated the shadow with a pencil line there. So putting the water on with the size 6 brush, I'm teasing back from the serrations right before I start adding the colour, just so some of the serrations will get the first flush of colour. Of course, you don't have to have done the horse chestnut to do this leaf. You can have done, you could do the leaf first and then do the horse chestnut if you want to, or conker as I call them. So I'm picking up the blue green and I'm going to use that on this side here. And I put on quite a lot of water, so I'm going to just enjoy dropping on the colour with a little bit more relaxed feeling, rather than feeling stressed to get over the whole thing. And just pull that up to the midrib. I'm going to go around that spot there. And I'm going to bring this colour up to that vein there. And dab it in here because it's slightly mottled and changes colour there. And then straight away clean your brush very quickly and pick up the brighter green. I might go for this one up in the corner actually, maybe that's too bright, that one. And I'm going to drop that colour on. Drop it close to the original green that you've put on so that they mix and merge. And then as you get close to the serrations, you can either downsize or you can slow down with your brush and just tease the green into the serrations. You can always perfect them after the first glaze is done, but it's nice to get them connected onto the leaf at this stage. And there's a little nibble there. So now, while that's settling, I'm going to quickly downsize to my size 4 brush, wake it up, dry it off, and I'm going to use that as a little bit of a lifting brush. So I'm going to lift out a little bit of light, not too much, towards the midrib. And this is still wet, so it's quite nice just to sort of pick out a little bit of colour. And then down here where the serrations are a little bit smaller, whatever I've picked up with my lifting, I can just push that into those little serrations before it dries. Just to irritate the edge of the paint if it's started to settle a little bit. And I'm going to add some of that green with the top corner green, the first edition of lemon. I'm going to add that to my shadow area at the top here. Take it down to the centre of the leaf. And then jump up to the other end. This is starting to settle now, so we're just going to lift out a few little dabs of light just where it's getting crinkled. If it all fills in again, then you're lifting too soon, so just give it a little moment to settle. and then come back to it. So I'm going to come back here and just lift a tiny bit of light. You can just see the veining showing through. I'm just going to lift a little bit of light to the top side of the veining here. Just a nice little cushion of light. Just to show that it's jumping in and out. It's early days, but this is the start of it. So really don't come back with a wet brush here, because you will end up with lots of cauliflowers where the paint just pushes out and makes a really pretty unwanted cauliflower pattern. Here I'm just lifting through just to get that little bit of cushioned light there where it tips in towards the vein. Each time you lift, just wipe it on the dab pad and then jump to the next line. Like I say, if you don't get the definition, give it a moment and then try again. And if you do get the definition, then work really quickly, because the timing is just right. And all I'm going to do here is just soften very gently that last bit of green, because it blends very gently into some yellow there, and we just don't want a hard edge, so I'm just softening. So I'm going to leave that to settle and dry, and that's all you need to do at that stage. Just get the nice glazes on, the nice greens on, and do that little bit of lifting. There's not too much more to do on that for the moment. So while that's doing that, we can repeat that process up here for this very simple leaf. Now I would still say, especially to people that are just starting out, do it 1/2 at a time. So don't do the whole leaf, don't do it 1/2 at a time. That way you've got plenty of time to think about the lifting and get it right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with the size 4 and glaze the top half. And this time I'm going to use a brighter green for the beginning. And because it's really small, I can get to all the serrations comfortably with the first wash. So I'm not going to put the water into them. I'm going to put the colour on and tease the colour out to the serrations. So I think I'm going to use that the second colour, the first colour. It was the first colour we mixed, which is the colour from the cup. So I'm mid-green. And I'm going to put that on as simply and as streak-free as possible, and get it close to the vein and the midrib, sorry, to the edge and the midrib, and then pick up that more lemony green as I run out and get to the other end. You can move your picture around so that it's really comfortable to put this on. It's not a comfortable angle for me, but I'm not going to move your picture around too much, it'll make you dizzy. So once you've got the green on, just then very gently, using the tip of your brush, just gently pull the paint into the serrations before it dries. Sometimes you could be more specific with the paint than you can with the pencil. So you can turn a poor drawing into a good painting by just being a little bit more careful with the tip of the brush. We tend to go large, then small, then large, then small. And just carry on till you get to the end of the leaf. I'm going to clean my brush, take the water out, and this time, instead of pulling a very thin highlight, I'm going to pull a bigger highlight through the centre. So take all the water out of the brush and just very gently wipe through the centre, and do it fairly swiftly. We don't want a big white line through the middle. We just want a very soft hump where the leaf is slightly bulging. Very gently, just to give it a little bit of dimension. Don't do too much. Less is more for this little leaf because it's fairly flat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other side and leave a very small gap for the midrib and then just fill that in afterwards. That way I can do both sides at the same time. If you're a bit frightened of doing that, then don't. Leave that to dry, and when it's dry, come back and do the other half. So once you've done the two halves, leave that alone. Don't fiddle with it anymore. Just get that dry and settling in the distance. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to repeat the process down here with the darker green and get this green section in here. It's a little bit more complicated to do a wash over an area that's separated by these little islands. But what you could do is you could take it up to one of the veins. So if I show you here, we can use a slightly brighter green and just take the glaze up to a very narrow part of the leaf pattern. So I'm just going to put the water there and pick up this brighter green for up here. Just take it around that little island there, through here. And then you can just take it up to, I think we'll put the vein there, it's just a little bit out of place. That's the trouble with drawing it freehand. And that way you can have a little break there. So you can just do that little section, and then you can continue your glaze. And if you wanted to do it in smaller sections, you could take it up to another vein if you wanted to. I'm going to take it from there all the way up to this vein, and then I'll continue it on around these little islands around here. We'll call them little islands, shall we? Because it looks like a little treasure map, doesn't it? So what we're going to do is just continue on from there with some water, and then drop on the green, and I'll use that blue-green that we used in the beginning. Just before I put my colour on, I was just going to suggest that you mix up some more of the darker colour, because we've got these little puddles, but the puddles will run out fairly quickly. So I'm just mixing up some more of the much more blue navy green, as we're calling it, so that I've got a bigger puddle to work from. So on this leaf you can see that what I'm doing is I'm pulling out that little bit of light, but I'm also branching out for the little Ys at the end. So it's quite nice just to have a little bit of light towards the end of the lateral veins, just to give it a little bit more interest and highlight. And you can also lift out a little bit of the top of the Y as well, which just gives you a little bit of lift there as well. You can always map it in again with another colour if you feel like you've taken too much out. And you can also lift out any little lights that you might want to. There's a little highlight there. But be very gentle with it, so just do it very, very carefully. And if you do have any little misses along the way, you can just very carefully with a dry brush just stroke it back in and maybe just blend it with any adjacent areas. So before I go on to the end of that leaf, I'm going to let that dry because I just want that to really settle before I add that little bit of island colour in. So what I can do is I can nip over here and start mapping in some of this side. And this side's a lot more interesting because we've got a variation of greens from a lemony green with a lemon almost all around the islands. So I've got my lemon ready. What I'm going to do is just practice up here with this first little area. So I'm going to put my glaze on. You don't need to spend ages putting the glaze on, you just need to put it on very precisely around these little patches so that you don't lose any light that you might need when you start to put the other colours on. So I'm going to wake up my brightest green that I mixed, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to take that from the centre, just up this side. Pull the green with you, so bring it downhill towards the wider part of the leaf. And then we'll go around that little peninsula. And then we'll go short of the edge there. Just get those little serrations in. And then very swiftly pick up our yellow and just catch along the edge with the yellow. So we get this nice little blur of yellow towards the edge of the island. So that's not too scary, I hope. Let's do the next section together as well. So this one, we're going to do this sort of bigger little ocean area here. So let's fill that in with water. And let's take it to about, let's just take it to the next one there. Let's do all of that area. It's like an unusual little shape there. I'm going close to the serrations but not into them. And this time what I'm going to do is start with the yellow, and I'm going to put the yellow as my little lovely flash of, let's call them the beaches around the little islands. I'm really going to some imaginary world now. But let's put a little bit of yellow around there. Oh, I didn't put any water up there, that's interesting. Let's just fill that in quickly. Continue with the yellow, where you get this lovely flare of bright yellow around this patch. And all the way around here. And then very quickly jump back to your, oh no, we need to put a little bit up here, sorry. Just put a little bit of the yellow up there, because we jumped over to the other side. And then very quickly pick up your bright green, give it a little stir, always good to stir it. And we'll go from this side and go near it very quickly so that the two just blend together nicely. So we'll go near the yellow first so that we get them blending and sitting well together, and then we'll add on the serrations. You have to choose your little battles. So bring that as close as we dare, and then near to the yellow. And then as we get to the edge, slow down and bring the tip of the brush into the serrations. Pulling it forward. So don't do the serrations and pull back, pull the paint forward to the serrations. That's the safest way to get them all connected. And relax. So that's two little sections done, that's quite nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that on this side for all of those little areas. And it's a bit peachy over here, so I might just mix up a new colour. Let's mix up a little bit of pink, so some rose madder with some lemon. And just go slightly more towards the rose than the lemon. And that way when we do this area around here, we can use that as the lovely sort of peachy colour through there. So I'm going to put the other little islands on. I'm going to finish the end bit of this, and then we'll come back and start working on some of the bigger patterns. I'm doing this section, I want to drop in a little bit of darker green to get a slightly mottled effect through here, and just get a slightly broken effect for the end of this leaf. So you can pick up the darker colour and drop it into the lighter colour just to get that lovely mottled effect. And then I'm going to continue the serrations towards the serrations in a slightly darker green, just because it gets darker there. It's very tricky doing the serrations when you're pulling them forward like this, so go as slow as you dare. Obviously you need to go as fast as you can to get them connected, but go as carefully as you can. So if you get a join where the two have met, don't worry too much about that. What you can do is you can wet the opposite side, which is dry, and just let some of that paint just soften into the dry area, and that way you'll get less of a join between the two areas. So we've got our main greens mapped in. We've got a little bit of lifting going on. I didn't lift here. I'm just going to grab a little bit of light out of there, just a little bit, just to get just a little bit of light there. Sometimes if you leave it too late it can settle, but if you're quick enough and persistent enough you can lift it away. So it's important to let all those areas dry before you move on. So let's just run in the stem of the leaf. And we've got this lovely light lemon, which I'm going to use as my glaze and keep that as the lighter side of my leaf. So I'm going to just run it onto the stem. Keep your brush really vertical so you can keep the line nice and fine. And have enough on your brush so you can get from A to B. It's quite nice just to sort of learn that skill, but I think a full brush with just the tip dabbed off, which should give you enough paint to get from the top to the bottom. We'll just let that settle for a minute, and then I'll go for this green up in the top corner here. So this was the first of the woodland green with some added lemon. And I'm going to just run that alongside that. Have a nice rest on the paper so that you can get a really good steady line. And have a little rest in between. And when you join back on, go back into the green that you've just left off, and then continue on. That way you'll get a nice seamless join. And up to the end. And then what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of water, so a damp brush, and just soften on the edge of that darker green so that it blends into the lemon. It'll be very subtle, but it should happen just gradually as the water just eats into that little bit of green. It will just move over, not to obliterate the lemon, but just to soften into it. And if it doesn't, just give it a little stroke like that with the tip of the brush, just to encourage it to move across. We'll leave that to dry. We want to go darker and we want to put a little bit more detail at the end, but I just want that to settle and dry. So let's come back and start putting in some of the little areas of discoloration. And what I want is, I want my eradicator's not playing ball. Where is he? There he is. So the one that I went over here, I'm just going to reveal him again. So just using the eradicator in that area. And a bit of clean kitchen towel. We'll just lift away a little bit of light. And then the one that needs tidying up, we'll do the same there. A little bit of water. And if you get any hard edges, you can get rid of those. You might want the hard edges, but if you want rid of them, then just irritate away. And just have a little check over, see if there's any other areas that need revealing. I think that one's okay. So over here we've got a little bit of light, or a little bit of rotting leaf. What do we call it? I don't know. A little bit of autumning. And then there's a couple of little dots here. Now you could use masking fluid and have all of these protected, and that would be an option. Very often I don't use masking fluid just because I love the spontaneity of working from life, so I generally don't use it, but if you want to use it you can. And also with green it lifts away quite nicely, so you don't need to worry too much. And I'm just going to remove the edge around that little space there. So I think that's enough removals there. There is another one just here. Let's just do that one as well. If we're going to do one, let's do the other. So you just stay on that area and then dab away, and that should come back to pretty much as white as you're going to need it. Okay, so the next thing to do is we're going to put some colour onto them. So this colour is very easy to mix. It's a sort of dirty, pinky, creamy colour. So we've got that little bit of cream that we mixed up. So let's take a bit of our first woodland green and mix it into that little bit of peachy colour, and then just map it in. This one's a bit brighter, so we can do a second layer in the middle once that's dry. And if we've got that colour anywhere else, which we have, let's just drop a little bit of that colour into this area here. So I'm not going to wet this area, I'm just going to drop some colour into it, just so that it can settle and dry, and then we can build over the top. So have a little look around and see where any areas look like there'll be that colour, and map them in. So I'm going to jump over here and start mapping in some of the areas over here, and once we've done that we can come back and start mixing some of the prettier colours that are in this lovely weathering. So what I'm doing is putting this colour here, and then I'm softening around the edge because I want that to blur and I want to build other colours around. And I shaded this in pencil to remind me to work around it. It looks like I've got masking fluid on it, but it's just graphite. So that's just to remind me that there's a little bit of broken leaf there. So I think that's enough of that colour. I'm going to add a little bit of the lemon, just a bit around here, and a little bit into there as it's settling. So you can just drop that in as that is drying. And now what we want to do is mix up some orange. I'm going to make a little bit more space on my palette so we can make up a few pretty colours in the middle to use. So I'm going to mix up this lovely pretty orange colour here, and we'll keep the colours the same. It's always good if you can mix your colours from the same mix your mixes from the same basic colours. So this is lemon and pink together, and we're making it just a bit brighter and juicier, so it's more orange. So I'm going to put this on and then soften again afterwards. So I'm going to put that there. This will fade a little bit, so if it looks a bit loud, don't worry. So put your colour on very quickly, soften your brush, clean and soften the edge with your damp brush. And I'm just going to catch this edge as well, just before it dries, just so we don't get too much of a hard edge to it. And don't worry about the pencil, we'll get rid of that before we get into any heavy colour. So just take a little bit of that, and then we can just plop that roughly where we are. I'm not going to slavishly copy every little bit. I'm really using this as a guide, and then we'll just enjoy putting on these little bits of broken colour here and there. So let's jump around with that colour, and we can put that colour up here. So if it's got a very soft edge, put a little bit of water down. If it's got a hard edge, just fill in, and if it's got a hard and a soft edge, put it on and catch the soft edge and leave the hard edge. I think that makes sense. We'll just pop this colour on where we need it. So the next colour that I want to mix up is a sort of mid-green, sort of chalky green. So what I'm going to do is take that green that we mixed up straight from the woodland puddle and just water it down, and that should be a nice woodland pale green. And we're going to use that to just give a little bit of a green halo to this little patch here. And notice I'm ignoring some of the small bits of dark green because we'll put them at the end just to sort of define certain areas. And also if I've got a hard edge, I'm not dealing with that now. Or sound like a prima donna, don't. I'm not dealing with that now, but you have to choose your little bits of putting right and adapting things towards the end. We just want to get all the little colours mapped in at the moment. So I'm going to put this softer green over here. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit of the lemon green as a washed out puddle as well. That's the palest green that we mixed, because in some areas it will be lighter. So I'm going to use this as a sort of little background to that area there. Drop in a little bit of lemon as well. Oh, I'll sort that out in a minute. If you go over the edge, don't worry. Can wiggle it away. And then what I want to do is go for that pretty peachy colour, but just put some of the dirtier colour into it, water it all the way down, and I'm going to use that as my general colour as a background to all of this discoloration. If you feel like you're chasing a puddle, just dry your brush off on the dab pad so that you're not chasing a big puddle of peachy paint everywhere. And so this one is that, and it goes up to there, and we'll put a little bit of peach in there. So that area's got its background mapped in, and so all I need to do is just find the other little areas of colour here for the background colour, not the top colour. And when I'm talking about the top colour, I'm talking about this brown that goes over the top and these little bits of mildew, the dark mildew. So we're looking to mix up this very pale peachy background colour, and then we can put on the softer grey browns over the top. So get all of those background colours mapped in now, softening and dropping into water if you need to. This one here, I'll drop the peach into the pale green, and hopefully we'll end up with a pale green edge and the brown. You can go much more detailed on leaves, and I'm sure you've seen plenty on Instagram where they're, or Facebook or online, where they're really super surreal and super real rather. This is sort of middling, it's somewhere in the middle of the ground. So we're looking to get a really good portrait of the leaf, but we're not looking for that sort of high definition photographic look to it, but somewhere in between. So it's a nice sort of painterly look of the plant, a botanical painterly picture of it. Off we go. So I've mapped in most of that orange now, and you can see that it's still quite soft, all of the detail. So what we need to do now is mix up some of the darker browns to go into the sort of really distressed areas. So I'm going to mix up a brown using quinacridone gold and some, let's go rose madder, quinacridone gold. That will give us a really bright golden orange colour, and then just add a little bit of the French ultramarine to it. Just keep it quite dirty but fresh. That doesn't make sense, but anyway, try that, and if you need to go darker, just add a little bit more of the French ultramarine. Let's try that. So I'm using my size 1 now. I'm just going to come down and put some of this marking here. So I'm going to just draw, let's just take some of the paint off my brush. We're going to draw a little edge like so, just to establish the outside of the shape. It doesn't matter if it's not exactly what you're seeing, as long as it's as close as you can get. I'm saying that for my benefit more than yours. and then we're going to come this way, and as the pattern gets lighter, just lift your brush a little bit lighter, a little bit finer. So once you've got an edge there, you can just zip over and get a little edge coming down here, and then carry that around there. So keeping my brush right on its tiptoe. And then you can water that down and add a little bit more quinacridone gold. Just have a little neighbouring puddle that's a little bit brighter. Oh, I'm using the say that again. Just add a little bit of rose madder. And what we're going to do is just put a little bit of colour and just see how that looks. It will always fade a little bit lighter, so if you don't go as dark as you wanted to, don't worry, you can always put another little layer on. Just giving myself an indication of the veining there as well. And there's a little bit of a sort of fine line through here. So put a little bit of the colour on, see how it dries, and then if it dries okay, then carry on with that colour. If it's too bright, which I think it might be for the next area, then just go back to the puddle with the French ultramarine in it. So we're going behind that line and filling in the colours that you see. There are all kinds of little nuances in here, and if you felt like blowing the leaf up and going into all the little nuances, the techniques would be the same. You'd just be doing a little bit more focused work, and of course that's quite fun if you want to do that. So I'm going to water down that darker colour just so it's a little bit paler, and as it comes into the light I'm going to try and use that colour just to map the pattern over here. Let it settle for a moment, and if there are any little areas of bright light within that patch, you can use your eradicator to just very gently wiggle those out. But let it dry a little bit, don't try and get in there too soon, otherwise you'll upset it all. But this is how I get the sort of like little patterns within there, just wiggling and lifting with the eradicator. So we're putting on and taking off, and that way we stay in control. Of course, if you get it right the first time, you don't have to lift off. I don't know why I'm laughing nervously. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to outline our little patches, paint in the colours that we see, and then leave it to rest a few seconds, and then lift out any little sort of crinkles and creases or little spots of light. Now, one of the things that's really important to look at is the veining. So if if you feel like your veining is not falling in the pattern in the correct way, then adjust it now, you know, because I drew mine freehand, so there's a little bit of tweaking that I'm having to do as I'm starting to focus in. So one of the other things that we're going to do as well, we'll work on getting all of this leaf, all the little patterns in, but also while I'm waiting for the patches to dry, I'm going to use the very dark green that we mixed up, get my brush on its tiptoe, and I'm going to put in the veins. So I'm going to mark the crease where the vein is tucking into. I've just got a little bit of fluff on my brush there, and I'm just going to put a little dark line right next to that little bit of highlight that I lifted out, and this should coincide with my pencil line, so if any of the pencil is looking really prominent, that should go underneath the paint and disappear. And if you need to go darker, you can add a tiny little puddle of indigo, some of that green with some more indigo into it, and as it gets closer to the midrib, just run in a little bit of indigo. That will help you go darker quickly, and that way when we put our little finishing glazes on, that should save us a little bit of time later on. So don't forget, if your blemish comes over the top of the vein, or the dark line to represent the vein, it might change colour. So if you get to the blemish, just jump over it, put your dark line in, and then come back and replace the area that you've missed with a different colour, so that blemish, it will give you a little bit of browning on the vein there. So lots of little things to think about, but take each little pattern, find where you've got a hard edge, draw that little hard edge and soften behind it, and if you need to add more colour, add more colour. And where it gets a little bit sort of streaky and dry, use your eradicator to try and get some of those crinkles. I would work quite methodically from the top to the bottom on this leaf, just bringing in some of my veining and then starting to work in on my patterns. And then if anything crops up that I think is really important, I'll come back to you. So once you're happy that you've got the pattern more or less worked out, what you can do is start to build up on the green. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wake up that green up in the corner. That was our woodland green with some lemon in it. And what I want to do is I want to just very gently sweep over a little bit more colour, because it's quite blue and I want to bring in some green. So I've loaded my brush and I've taken some of the excess off on the dab pad. And what I want to do is I want to just very gently dance the brush just to get some of those little ripples between the veining, that we can't see the veining because of the angle of the leaf, but if you just sort of sweep it across like that, we get a little bit of the sort of the texture and the rippling between them, and also it's adding a little bit more green to it. And we'll keep it a little bit lighter towards the top, just so that you keep that little bit of highlight. Remember, we're making an illustration, so we can extend enhance the light if we want to. We don't have to religiously copy the photograph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work across each little section, just putting in these lovely little textures that we can just about pick up, but also, I say, it's just adding another little layer of fresh green to go over that blue colour that we put on as our base. Try not to lose your highlight towards the vein, and try not to lose all the light at the top. Pick up your colour, dab it off, and then just sweep it very gently, just picking up, or dabbing down rather, intermittently, just to get that nice texture. So we'll do that all the way down that side, and while I'm at it I might just put a little bit more over this side as well, but I'll come back to you because I want to talk about the shadows on this side as well. So the next thing I want to do is I want to put a little shadow up here over that corner there, and I also want to put a very dark shadow along this line here. So I'm going to just stir up my dark green, but I'm going to use it a little bit thinner, so I'm watering it down. And then what I'm going to do is try and put it on in one go. So it's going to go across the corner of that little blemish there, like a little flat cloud, and across to the other side, and then pull the colour with you all the way down to the middle, and don't go back. So you can make it a little bit thicker and a little bit darker for that very strong shadow along the edge, and that starts roughly about here. It's very skinny. Just bring the colour with you. A little bit wider there, a little bit wider there, and then down and alongside. That little bit of shadow just gives that tiny little tipping over point of the leaf there. The other thing that I'd quite like to do is get a bigger brush. So I'm going to use a size 4. A 2 or a 4 or a 6. A 6 is probably a bit too big, but a 2 or a 4 will work. I'm going to use my woodland green, my first mix, but watered all the way down. And I'm just going to add a little bit more sort of general shadow across this part of the leaf. So I'm going to just very gently sweep a little bit of shadow there. And if there's any little bits of white that I don't want, I can get rid of them. So just using the brush on its edge here, we can very gently deliver that little tea wash of green. And I'm using my eyelashes, just squinting through to see where the darks really lie. We've put some little colour patches of green here. I'm just going to connect over the line of the vein, and then just a little bit more colour on this area here. So you can see I'm just using it very gently, and you can always come back and darken certain areas, but it's nice to have a sort of finishing glaze that sort of ties things together. I don't know why I do that, but it's sort of a way of reacting to the words I'm saying. So I'm just putting another little bit of layer over this shadow at the top here, and we'll carry that over onto the other side. Now, one of the things you can do when you're perfecting the leaf as well is to look at the serrations. So I'm going to go to my green with the lemon in it. Downsize again to my size 1 or your fine liner, whichever is easier, or your size 2. And we're going to find the serration that's easiest to find. And then just work back a couple of really good shapes. And then with a damp brush, just tap behind that line. So you're perfecting the serration, but you also don't want an outline. It's a bit fiddly, but it does help you get a better look to the serrations. They want to look like the serrations for the leaf. If they're just an approximation, they will look wrong. However, you know, do your best. And the other thing to do as well is if you've made any wee mistakes along the way, tiny mistakes, then you can use your eradicator. Just went too far with that little vein, so I'm just going to irritate that away. And I've got a bit of an outline there that I just want to irritate away. And then if there's any pencil that's got caught beneath your serrations, remove that as well. So the next thing to do when you've done that is to match your colour up. I'll grab some of that yellow, and then what we're going to do is very gently, I think possibly I've got my, looking at my picture, I've got my vein just coming a little bit too far to the right. So let's remove it completely. It's quite nice to see me making a mistake, I think, because none of us are without fault. And I think there's a little bit of the drawing that should have been amended right at the beginning. So I've irritated that out. Now what I'm going to do is just pick up a little bit of the dirty yellow. I'm just going to mix a bit more of it. So I'm going to put some lemon. And I'm going to put a little bit of pink in it. Just a tiny bit. And what we want to do is just very gently repair. So I should have come a little bit wider there. So we put that right, and then pick up this colour and then just very gently replace the serrations, just very, very lightly, to come down into our nice little point there. Sorry, I'm talking slowly because it's a tricky one to do. And then what I'm going to do is pick up a little bit more lemon and just soften that area in, like so. Phew, it's good to notice these little things, and it's good to know that you can put things right. Obviously, if the paper's really good at being manipulated, then that's fine. The next thing to do, though, is to look at your other veins, because obviously I went too wide on that one, so I'm going to turn this one in as well. Otherwise, the gap would be too short between them. So what I'm going to do is return to just perfecting my little serrations along here. The more perfecting you do, the better it's going to be. So, but try not to do too much outlining, because outlining really doesn't help. It does make it look a bit too forced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat those processes on this side. Let's see if we can bring that whole leaf together. Keep your mixes nice and clean. Mix them up again if you need to. Clean the palette again if you need to. And keep working through nice and methodically from the top to bottom. And we'll come back to this little area as well, which has the black mildew. So let's get this mapped in. Put on some lovely music, enjoy the moment, and we're nearly there. We're sort of, we're galloping along with this leaf. Obviously, you've still got the rest of it to do, but generally speaking, I feel like we're getting somewhere with these nice techniques. Off we go. So we've got to a point now where I want to put a shadow across this corner of the this edge of the leaf. So what I want to do is I want to mix up a shadow colour, and I'm going to mix up something. I mean, you could paint all of those colours individually, but I want to mix up something that will give me a nice sort of shade right across it. So I'm going to use some cobalt blue. I just made a little clean space in my palette, on my palette for it. And to that I'll add a little bit of my main green, my cup green, and a little bit of quinacridone gold. So I want something like a warm grey is what I'm looking for. Greeny grey. I suppose it is a greeny grey, but I want a bit more warmth to it. I think we probably need to add just a tiny bit of red. Let's try that. I'm going to try and put it on in one go, so I'm going to drag it from, sweep it, sweep it across very gently and pull it round into the shape that I want. So don't make it too thick, because then it will be too much. And I'm not going to go over the yellow with it, I'm just going to go over the brown. And then just here we need to show a little bit of the serrations that are falling upon it. And I'm going to go over my green shadow as well. There. So that's fine. And then what I'll do is, for the yellow part, I'll just get a little bit of Sennelier yellow on its own and just make that slightly warmer because it's in the shade. So what we can do now is we can leave this one to dry. We've got most of the areas in. There's a little bit more shadow that I need to put down here, but I want to let that settle and dry. And we'll jump over to this leaf now. So I'm going to do a little bit of tidying up of the veining, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint them in. So I'm going to use a little bit of the dark green just to paint in some veining, and use a little bit of the orange as well to paint some of the veining over here and get those in exactly the right place, because I don't want to keep all of that pencil on show. And then I will map in a little bit of the darker colour through here, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about this area and adding the mould on this side. So I'll start by doing a little bit of structure to music, and I know that we've put quite a lot of this to sort of music, but there's a lot of repetition in here, so you want to I want to try and speed it up for you, but at the same time take a little bit of time just to really look and see and map against your other leaves that you've got everything in the right position for the veining, because if you just rely on my drawing, you might get one or two little areas that are incorrect. Anyway, let's put in some detail and then I'll come straight back to you. So I've got to the point where I want to put on this really nice sort of dotty dark patch of mildew, and I'm going to mix up a really strong little dark colour. So let's mix up a little bit. Let's keep it in the family. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my green colour, my cup green, my woodland green, which is just made from the two blues and the two yellows. And I'm going to use it up here. So I'm going to use some quinacridone gold, which we've already used, some more French ultramarine, and some Sennelier red. So it's going to have a few little colours in there, but it will keep it nice and dark, but also related to the rest of the painting. So what we're going to do is pick that up with the size 1. And I'm going to just dot on really and try and dot it on to make it look random. So I'm going to start by putting on a little bit of the vein as a guide. Try and get it really nice and fine. Just a little hint of that, and then your positioning of the vein will give you where you can put your mildew. So at the moment I'm keeping the brush on the tiptoe and I'm just going to dot it on. So it's lots of little tiny dots. And just don't get too carried away going too fast, because you turn into dashes. You've got to keep your brush right on its tippy tiptoe, and then where it's really most concentrated you can stay in the same place for a bit, but as it starts to move out, obviously the dots will look more isolated, so they need to be more perfect. And just dot, dot, dot. Like so, and then we can fill this area in a little bit more. Then I'm going to add just a little bit more quinacridone gold, make it a little bit more brown, and I'm going to work the dots up here into bigger little areas of blemish and mildew and all the things that are going on with this leaf, and try and mimic what I'm seeing. Another little bit of veining coming through here. I'll use the brown for that. And then come back here and add a bit more. I usually find that if I'm putting some dots on and I want them to be fairly irregular and not in a pattern, that it's sometimes a good idea to have a little break in the middle of doing it and then come back to it, because your hand naturally seems to want to put everything into a pattern, or at least mine does. And you tend to have a sort of set pattern that you go to, whereas if you stop and then interrupt that automatic patterning system that's happening in your head, you can get a more random pattern created. So just as that's coming out, just make sure that the dots look like dots as they're coming out away from the cluster and looking a little bit more random. And then we'll have another little peninsula of them coming down here. A few of them a bit bigger, and having them dotting towards another bit of veining that's gone brown as well. So that's giving us a nice little area of mildew, and now what we need to do is let that dry for a little bit, because what we're going to do is come back with the eradicator and just soften some of it to sort of smush it a bit. So I'm going to continue putting this on, and I'm going to put some of it on over here. That's obviously something that you want to be listening to some nice music while you're doing it. And also don't forget, we've got this hole here. I've removed the pencil. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little sort of lattice work. Let's mix up a little bit of that colour, a bit paler, and add some pink. So a lighter brown. And then we're going to have these little bits of remaining leaf just sitting in that gap, almost sort of breaking up. And then there's a little bit of vein that's hanging on in there, and then another little bit of leaf that's remaining, and another little bit of peninsula. So you're putting in those little bits of broken vein that are a broken leaf, nibbled, rotting away. We'll just get those established. And remember not to sort of glaze over that, because that's a hole through the leaf. So we're going to use this black to, or the very dark brown, just to put in this mildewing around here, and then I'll come back to you. So I'm going to put on some nice bits of extra green now, and then we'll come back and soften the mildew. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up my greens and wake them all up. So I've got my cup green with some lemon. I'm going to put my clean cup green down here on top of the really lemony green, and then my blue green. And what we want to do is we want to put on some nice little patches of deeper green just to get this lovely little bit of light that's on this leaf. So I'm going to use the cup green and water it down. And I'm going to run this over this corner here, very lightly. And then very quickly just soften next to it. And this way you'll get a nice area with a soft edge. And then move to another area. Let's go up here and put this into shadow up here. So again, just lay it on as quickly and as cleanly as you can. Try not to sort of wiggle it around too much because you'll dislodge all the detail. And we'll just go over this little area here a little bit stronger. Quickly clean your brush, take the water out and catch that little edge there. So we've got two ends now that have had another glaze, and then we'll just continue using the blue-green here and get this area looking just a little bit darker. What I'm trying to do is go short of the lemon because I don't want to lose that little flash of lemon. So it doesn't matter if it's not exactly like the photograph, really, it's just a guide so that you can build the colours and get the pattern looking as good as possible. That's quite nice. I'm going to go for the lemony green and just catch on next to that with the lemon green. And when I get near to the serrations, I'm just pulling it out into the serrations a little bit more. And just lift a little bit more away there, just for that little light area. And a little bit more lemon into my green, just for this little corner here. The greens will fade a little bit, and it's quite nice to be able to beef up or sort of, add additional lemon to it, because the lemon is the thing that tends to sort of look great while it's wet, and then it dries to nothing. Now, I haven't fiddled with my serrations yet. That's what I want to do right at the end. But we will need to sort those out and get those looking nice. So I'm going to carry on putting on my little glazes over here. Now, this one I want to put a little bit lighter. So I want a slightly bluer green here, but I'm going to use it a little bit thinner. And then quickly pick up the lemon green and meet up to that little vein there. And then if you've got a moment, just make sure you get a nice edge, soft edge around that little lemon glow. Slightly brighter green here. Now here we've got a really strong shadow, so I'm going to continue from that shadow line that I've got going on there, and then curve it out and leave a little bit of light. And again, clean your brush and just get that nice edge next to the lemon. You can always add more lemon onto the lemon if it's not bright enough. You want to get a really clean amount of concentrated bright lemon. And anywhere where you think it's really, really bright, you can just dab a little bit more on. Just tiny little touches of it will make it sing out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use my eradicator, and I'm going to just blur some of that mildew. So I'm going to just tap with a damp brush into the centre just to smudge it a little bit. And a little bit over here, just tapping it on, sort of almost sort of stippling over the top of it, just with a damp eradicator. Don't press too hard because you don't want to damage your eradicator and you don't want to remove all of the marks. It's just a gentle encouragement to smudge. I'm just going to lift a little bit more light out there. Just to make that little bit of highlight just a bit stronger. And to remove that little bit of pencil there as well. So a little dab on the top just to smudge them a little bit, and then you can add some more detail over the top. So I can do that over here as well, and it also softens some of the marks that you've made. If they look a little bit sort of artificial just laid on top, it's quite nice just to sort of give them a little smush, make them look more natural, because all of this is just damage to the leaf that we're trying to replicate. Okay, so the last thing then is to put on some little bits of texture to this leaf in the green areas, and also put a nice finishing wash and perhaps a little bit more tone onto this leaf. And also we want to come back to our stem, so I'm going to do it in reverse order of what I've just said. So I'm going to put a stronger line on my stem, so I'm going to put a much sharper, darker edge along the top edge of the stem, and I'm just using the dark green that we mixed, using a size 1 brush and going really steady so that the paint sits in to any texture on the paper and gives you a really lovely sharp edge. This will give you that lovely deep shadow that the stalk has down this side, and then a little bit of the lemony green just to sweep in there, get that little fold in. Soften it a little bit, and then I'm going to use a softer green and just give a little bit more green coming in just at the end there, and perhaps just a hint of it to create an edge on this side, and grab a little bit of that pink. Can't do it with a dirty brush, Billy. Pick a little bit of that sort of gingery pinky colour just on the end. Good, so then this leaf needs a little bit of our dark green just to sharpen up, but what I want to do is I want to mix that up, get that ready, and then put the detail on over the top of a sort of freshening glaze. What I want to do is I want to cover it with a nice lemon tea wash. So I'm going to use my lemon green, but water it all the way down, add some more lemon. So it's a very, very pale lemony green, and I'm going to use that as a glaze over the top just to freshen up that green. And I want that to settle and dry, and then we'll come back and just make those veins a little bit stronger. So I'm going to put a little bit of texture onto my leaf here, tidy up the edges of the serrations, and then come back and tidy up those veins and make them a little sharper. And then I think we'll be done. So I'm going to sort of leave this project here, as it were. So I'll put all of that to music in just a moment, so you'll see the finished project. And you'll see the way I've placed it with the open conker, the horse chestnut, that we've already painted. So you could just do this as a leaf on its own and add it to a page of leaves. You could just do one section just to practice the techniques and maybe do them a bit better than me, I don't know. But you could put them together, and you don't have to put them together like this. You can put them together at any angle because you'll have the images that you can move around. And you could maybe add in some loose conkers or loose horse chestnuts here to embellish it. We did a horse chestnut that was very dry back in the early days, so you could add that to here. I think keep it as a horse chestnut page, although if you did want to add some other autumn elements, there's nothing to stop you. So I'm going to maybe add another conker in here, and I'll share that composition with you when I've finished it. And I'm just going to finish the leaves now using all the same techniques, and we'll see that at the end. But I hope you give this one a go. I know I always say that, but I do think that leaves in a way are a really good thing to practice. And as we move through all of our tutorials, eventually I will come up with something that's a little bit more photographic for those that are really advanced, to really work on getting something to look really, really quite special. But it's all about building your confidence with the medium and learning how to make those marks and knowing what to do to make some marks look more natural and to make some marks disappear into the shadows and so on. So hopefully that will be useful to you. Certainly I think those little washes over to get these little undulating shadows is really useful. So there we go, we've got that finished. You can always come back and add a little bit more detail and a little bit more precision here and there. Let the painting rest and don't overwork it, but give it a go and see if you can get something beautiful to go alongside your conkers.